Have you ever noticed that little voice in your head doing analysis and solving problems, coming up with that perfect solution while your client is talking? Maybe it's your colleague or a spouse or a friend who's sharing that special problem that they really, want your ear on, and you're waiting for a break in the action so you can share that bit of wisdom that's going to make everything go away and make it all better. We all do it, right? Probably all do it. I know I do it. That doesn't make it a good idea. Now, I've been told by clients, I'm the best listener they've ever met. What they don't realize maybe is that that's because they experience me when I'm trying really, really hard. This is not easy to do. So let's take a lesson from Kaldi the goat herder. Now, if you've heard this story before, I invite you to listen with new ears and see what you might notice. So Kaldi was a goat herder in Ethiopia a long, long time ago. And he was out on the steppes with his goats, as goat herds tend to be, sitting around the campfire, and he noticed that his goats were eating these little cherries off of the bush. They danced all night long. Happy goats. And he's thinking, that made my goats really happy. I wonder what's up with those little cherry things. Maybe I should go try one, because I'm curious. Goats were dancing all night. So he goes over and he grabs some of those cherries and he pops in his mouth. Nastiest thing he ever tasted in his entire life. He spits out this half-chewed mush of stuff into his hands, and he's thinking, that's really nasty. But the goats liked it. And if you're a goat herd, you learn to trust your animals, right? So the goats liked it. I wonder what I'm missing. The goats clearly know something that I don't. Well, back then they didn't have the internet. He couldn't whip out his smartphone and look up, what's up with the berries and the goats. So he did the next best thing. He found a monastery, because that's where all the wise people were. He knocks on the front door of the monastery, and the monk comes out, invites him in. They're standing around this little courtyard, little fire in the middle. And he holds out this handful of half-chewed mush to the monk, and he says, is there any virtue in these things? And he plops them in the monk's hand, and this monk has a handful of nasty mush, and he says, no, they're worthless, and he tosses them in the fire. Well, now Kaldi's all kind of dismayed, because he tried them. They were pretty nasty. Took them to the monk. The monk says they're worthless. But the goats liked them. There's something that we're missing. And he's standing there perplexed and puzzled, and he starts to hear the sound of, almost sounds like popcorn coming out of the fire. Next thing you know, there's kind of an aroma coming in. That smells pretty good. And he looks in, the monk had dropped him pretty close to the edge. There's little tiny brown beans left over. And he finds a stick and he kind of fishes them out. If you haven't figured it out, Kaldi just discovered coffee, which we're all very grateful for. At least I am. Anybody that knows me, I'm a complete coffee fiend. So what's the lesson there? What can we gain from that when it comes to listening? There's 3 things that I think we can pull out of that. Number 1, suspend judgment and engage curiosity. How many times did Kaldi have a choice to say, yeah, worthless, right? Popped them in his mouth, taste terrible, they must be bad. Go to the monk. Monk says they're worthless. Must be right. He didn't give up, right? He suspended that judgment, even the judgment of experts, long enough and maintained that curiosity to figure out what might actually be there, and he discovered coffee in the process. The next lesson is get multiple perspectives, right? So the goats liked it. Was that enough? Nope. He needed to try it himself. His own perspective matters, so he try some of those. Nah, get another perspective. Let's check with the monk. Okay, that wasn't enough, but at least he got the different perspectives. The other is use all of your senses. So you think about all the things that were involved in his experience right there, right? So he saw the goats. He saw them dancing around all night long. Pretty cool. He tasted it, actually tasted it. Ugh, didn't taste very good. Took him to the monk, and if it wasn't for his hearing and his nose, he never would have looked down to see those nice little brown beans that we all love so much. So use all of your senses. Now, I'm sure we have some great listeners here in the room. And if you think you're one of those great listeners, I'd like you to wrap your knuckles on the table 3 times so we know you're out there. There's a few. I know one in particular. Where's Jason Katz? He's around here someplace. Jason's from Cincinnati. I sat with him at breakfast a couple of days ago, and I know he's a good listener because I know a good listener when I see one. And he was listening, and he told a story. He's an interesting guy. He's got a CPA and a CFP, and I asked him, do you ever argue with yourself in your own head? It's like all the time, right? So imagine if he's listening to a client and he's trying to process both of his personas, there's going to be a lot going on there, right? Maybe he should just focus on listening. He's gotten pretty good at it from what it sounds like, right? So there's really 3 keys to next level listening. Now, what Jason does is active listening, and that's great. It's fantastic. If you're doing that, in fact, if you wrapped your knuckles on the table, I guarantee you practice active listening, and you've probably heard what that is, right? It's you paraphrase back to make sure that they know that you know that they know that you understood and all that kind of stuff, and you check in. But it's not enough. At least there's still better to be had. This session is about next level listening. So what does it take to get to the next level? There's 3 things that I'm going to suggest that will help get you to the next level in your listening. Number 1, be super intentional. Now that word has shown up multiple times in multiple presentations over the last few days. Being intentional matters. And we mean be intentional, like understand why you're taking it to that next level and if it's even worth it. Now there's probably some out there saying, well, isn't it always worth it? I mean, my gosh, if you could listen better, wouldn't you always want to do that? Not me, because it's exhausting. It takes, Gina was talking about laser versus shotgun. This is a laser activity. It takes all of your energy and all of your focus to do this really well. The second thing is, get the perspectives of what's being said by others in the moment. Well, wait a minute. What if I'm having a conversation with one person? Well, see, that's the thing. If you want to do next level listening, do it with a group. Well, okay, that doesn't always work. If you can, get some different people together and do this in a group. There's limitations of one-on-one, and I'm going to tell you a couple of case studies here. They're short, I promise. The first one was at the turn of the century, and I was involved. It's kind of cool to just say that. It was a little company called Yamaha Music Corporation. Actually, not a little company, pretty awesome, pretty big company. And they put on this program called the Process Excellence Project. And I had the privilege of joining a group of 3 other consultants. And over many, many weeks and many, many, many hours, we helped them put together a map of their commercial enterprise from end to end. It took hours. We did one-on-one interviews, lots of them. We went back to the ivory tower and we talked to each other about those one-on-one interviews, and we tried to get a shared sense of what we were seeing and write that down and then take it back to the client and say, is this what you said? We kind of got some of it right and we kind of didn't. And we dialed it in and it ended up, it was great. Fantastic work product. I got a little plaque I still have up on my desk. It's one of my shining achievements of my professional career. And then almost exactly a year ago this month, I did a similar kind of project with a company up in Cleveland. You might have heard of them. They're called the Exit Planning Institute. Now this was one advisor, little old me, not one-on-one interviews. We had pretty much everyone in the company in the room, and we did the same thing in less than 8 hours from end to end. We got a better result, faster, at a significantly lower cost than what was possible with the project with Yamaha. Now, I'm not saying one was better than the other in terms of the outcome. They were both, I think, pretty awesome outcomes. But think about, how many times you're going to do this. Better, faster, and cheaper. That's worth it. There's a business case for this next level listening. So if you can do this in groups, do it in groups. The last key to next level listening, is use all of the eyes and the ears and the mindsets and the experiences of the people in that group while it's going on. What does that mean? People that know me, that have seen me facilitate, may have noticed, some pointed out, why is it that when the person's talking, you're looking at everybody else? And sometimes I'll even have to say that, right? Hey, I'm going to be scanning the room. I'm trying to pay attention to everybody. It's not just ADD. I'm actually trying to pay attention to what's all going on in the room. And what I'm looking for, I'm using my senses. I'm doing what Kaldi did, right? So I'm watching for body language. People lean in. People lean back. People cross their arms. Everything tells you something. I seem to have heard that somewhere recently, right? There's information out there. What about their facial expressions? Right? My favorite is scrunchy face. See scrunchy face, they're thinking something about what's being said. Right? Maybe it's a raised eyebrow. Maybe it's a frown. Maybe it's poker face. You get that too. Sometimes it's a sound. It's a sigh. It's a giggle. All of those things are cue to ask a follow-up question. Hey, I noticed you had a reaction there. What were you thinking? And what they're going to share is their perspective from their experience and their mindset of what was being said, which then you look at the other folks and you see the reaction of that perspective to see if others agree with that. And you look for scrunchy face, and you look for leaning in, you look for leaning back, you look for crossed arms. Next thing you know, there's ping pong balls of perception flying all around the room, and you can use that to get a very clear, comprehensive sense of, is it true what they just said? That's good to know. Sometimes they're like, yeah, it's bullshit. What was that? Did I hear? What were you thinking there? Yeah, well, that's not exactly how it went down. Tell me how you think it went down. And then, okay, I saw that. What were you thinking over there, right? So none of this is particularly easy. It is absolutely worth the investment. So if you only take two things out of this presentation. Oh, I forgot something. Remember when I said get perspectives from all the people in the room? So when you're doing that group, you want to pick the group well. So, and this is, I think, one of the magic pieces. I think there's some ready for next colleagues over there at that table. When Sean was talking about next level discovery, one of the things that we do in discovery is we engage a group. And if we're doing something like process mapping, which is part of one of the value acceleration sprints for productivity, is to draw a picture of what the business is, we look for what's called a maximum group. Maximum. We want the best footprint of that organization in the smallest number of people possible. So what do you mean footprint? We want all levels represented. It's not just the leadership team. Now, sometimes you're like, well, no, we're talking financial stuff. We just need the leadership team. This isn't that. Like, you still want to get the biggest footprint as you can and the smallest number of people and be appropriate and all that good stuff. But if you're doing process kind of work, you want all levels. You want the best representation of all the functions in that organization as you can get. You even want diversity in personalities. Right? You want a cheerleader. Why do you want a cheerleader? Well, because they're going to go talk about whatever just happened. So make it good, because they're going to go talk about it. You want a cynic, because you know they're out there. Better to have them in the room than out there going, yeah, those guys didn't know what they're talking about. Get them in the room. I see Chris nodding his head. He's done this before, right? Probably didn't use my words, but it's the same. It's good stuff, right? This is just good, solid stuff. So when you get all those groups together, and you're listening to what's going on, and you're playing off of the different reactions that are happening, you can really get that great picture of what's going on. So I'm going to leave you with two things. If you don't remember anything else from this conversation, kind of one-way conversation, I'm pretending it's a conversation. It's a lot easier if it feels like you're talking to me. I want you to remember this. If you think you're doing next level listening, you're like, I got this. This is easy and it's relaxing. You're doing it wrong. It's not easy and it's not relaxing. It is intense, hard work, and it's worth it. The second takeaway is if you're there to listen, just listen. And I don't mean just as in merely listen. I mean, laser focus. You are there to listen. And if you're up for the challenge and you go try this, I want to hear how it goes. So do me a favor, and there's some pamphlets over there on one of the tables. It's got my name on it. I'd love to hear how you guys practice this stuff. And thank you for listening.